What's a talisman? How do you make a talisman? Are there any risks in purchasing a talisman that's not been made with utmost care? All of these are questions that I asked Kaitlin Coppock, the Instagram star and creator of Sphere and Sundry, probably the world's most recognized and most well-respected company that make highly elected talismans. And what does highly elected even mean? The answer to this and many other questions are what you can look forward to over the next 40 minutes in this lovely interview with Kaitlin Coppock herself. I hope you enjoy the video. And now I present to you Kaitlin Coppock of Sphere and Sundry. What an absolute honor to meet you at last, Kaitlin. You know, we've been conversing for, what has it been? Like almost 2 years? It certainly feels like a long time, right?
It does. And I think we started planning maybe doing this back in October, and then things just kind of kept revolving. And I'm so grateful to connect with you at long last. This is a terrifying opportunity. I've only ever done one podcast before, and it was like 4 years ago.
That was a massive influence for me, and it's the basis for that video that I made on talismans, for which I'm incredibly grateful for that information that you just shared so clearly with the world. It really made talismans very, very easy for me to understand. Maybe, Kaitlin, actually, for people who are watching who are quite new to the idea of a talisman, and could you elucidate for us, what is a talisman?
So a talisman is an item of power. It's usually a ring or a necklace or something like that. And you can make them out of stones that you, for instance, carve at the time, or you can cast them in metal, or you can carve into metal. And they're highly, highly astrologically elected as far as this tradition goes. Astrology is so popular right now. Everyone is kind of used to getting the weekly update, and people can try and put a good spin on it. But a lot of people probably taken away by now that there's always something. There's always, Mercury's retrograde, Mars is in Cancer, this lunation's an eclipse, whatever it is. And so those really amazing moments that are worth keeping, that are worth ensouling in a gem that you're going to wear for the rest of your life, are few and far between. And it's not even just that you need Venus in Libra, for instance. It's that you need Venus in Libra while she's not being afflicted by any malefics, and preferably while the moon is aspecting her and the moon itself is in great condition and not being afflicted by malefics. And the ruler of the ascendant, which changes every 2 hours, has to be in good condition. Preferably Venus is configured to it. The power that you're looking to capture can also be on the midheaven, but the ascendant, because it rules the body of the talisman, you always have to look at the condition of the ascendant as well. And then on top of all of that, you have to get the right planetary hour, which changes all the time. So the slimmest margin we ever had for a Sphere and Sundry working was 12 minutes. That was luminous crown, where all of those factors aligned. And then the longest I've ever gotten is maybe an hour. And so you're really cherry picking the finest window of time, where not only is the power that you're courting in exceptional condition, but it's also in a position for the human, the mage, the priest, the priestess, to connect it to life on Earth. Because if it's walking past a building, but there's no window or there's no door, you're going to have a hard time getting it in there and
Yes,
kind of seeing it. So that's the idea with the planet needing to be on the ascendant or the midheaven, is like, can you connect with it? Is it beaming? Are we on the same wavelength, essentially? So those moments are really rare, and they don't even happen every year. So like there were 3 major elections this year that would have been fantastic to get. The elections were just not up to snuff for what we needed. When the sun was in Aries, Mars was in Cancer. And even an exalted planet is really hamstrung by a ruler that can't rise to the occasion. So we passed on that. Venus in Taurus was being afflicted by Rahu and Uranus. And so these aren't even things that can happen every year when someone thinks, oh, well, when Venus goes into this sign, I'll get one.
Mm.
That being said, if people are getting started with this, and I do recommend that they do, it's really rewarding and wonderful, but I would recommend starting with paper. If you're unsure of how a talisman is going to work, you're not positive whether your election is good enough for keeping forever,
Mm.
start with creating talismans on, high-end parchment, something like that, or a stone that you can break. I've definitely broken some talismans in my day. There's one in a sewer grate in Chicago. Each moment of time is so specific. You can say things about, well, this is what Venus and Taurus is like.
Mm.
But we've done a couple different Venus and Tauruses. We've done a couple different Venus and Libras. They all still have their own vibe because the moon's going to be somewhere different. It's going to be on the ascendant, or it's going to be on the midheaven. In the midheaven, it could be in the 11th, the 9th, or the 10th. So yeah, they all have their own personalities, and you can have theories, but it really takes working with them and building the relationship to understand exactly what that one's like.
Because it's about when that object is born, just like with
Mm-hmm.
people, it's about when they're born and they keep with them that energy, right, of that moment.
Yes, absolutely. So fumigation, which is just the fancy word for like smoke bathing stuff in incense, is such an important part of the talismanic process, the ritual process. And I
Mm.
like to think of that as basically the breath of that spirit that you're giving whatever you just created breath, because that's kind of when a child is born, is when it takes its first breath. It's of this ether now.
Oh, that's so nice.
All of my stuff was derived and cultivated from just adapting things that I found in the Picatrix originally. And the talismanic process is really cool and really quite simple.
Mm.
Um, you need to plan your space. And you can go as all out with that as I do, or you can do something pretty simple in just whatever temple you have. And also magic can be done on the fly. But the thing about talismanic workings is you got to rise to the occasion of the moment. So the more you make of it, the more
Of
attention you're going to
course.
get from the planet or the star. And so they say dress up in a way that the planet will recognize. So you're trying to ingratiate yourself, and you're kind of like,
Mm.
Jupiter, I'm dressed as a priest. What do you think? Because Jupiter loves priests. So the thing with the election is you want to approach anything powerful when they're in a good mood, when they're
Mm.
in a position to provide for you. So that's
Mm.
the core thing about the election. And then also, you want to ask for what that thing is also capable of providing. So you need to know what these stars and what these planets actually offer so that you can know what to ask for.
Mm.
Um, but then it's kind of like showing up for a date.
Mm.
You're going to dress in a way that you think will please or impress the power. And so that can involve wearing the right colors. It can involve, if you're doing a Venus working, putting makeup on and doing your hair. If it's a Saturn
Mm.
working, you can show up stinky and covered in ash. They all like different things. And so you set up the temple space, you set up yourself. I'm really big on energetic cleansing and ritual bathing. So typically before I come into a working, I'm doing that and using materia from that sphere or a compatible one to like sort of pre-attune and clear the field of things that aren't part of the working. And then when it's go time, typically I'm lighting the candles first, and then I'm lighting the incense, and then you read the address. So it's a little bit like it's very like the glory of Caesar. A lot of them,
Mm.
it's like, oh Venus, you who are stunning, you who are beautiful and bring all good things, you who are coated in flowers and all the rest, scented oils, and so you kind of spend probably at least 5 minutes just exalting them and giving them praise, and you can read those addresses from the Picatrix. The Hygromantia has some. You could write your own.
Sure.
Oftentimes, what we do is we'll kind of use something stock because we figure that the tradition recognizes some of that stuff,
Mm.
and then we'll segue into something that was prepared and written, and then after the main address, that's when I go into what I want, what I'm asking for. So bless and empower these herbs, make me and this materia created in your name an avatar of yourself and your will on this earth. You, as you are in this condition, bring, these things. And then I kind of continue riffing and continuing to pray as I'm going through the motions. And some aspects take more focus than others. So for instance, if you're actually making a talisman, you might not be muttering prayers that much when you're focused on trying to get your lines right or something. But when you're doing herbs and other things like that, and you're just sort of incensing a lot, you can really throw yourself into the moment. And that's what I refer to as kind of like prayers from the altar of the heart, like as you're moved, and it helps if you mean
of course, that's right. And this is exactly what I was going to say. You need to have a deep understanding of the powers that you're addressing so that you can riff in the right way, of course, right?
Yes. Yeah, and know what you want and know what you're asking for coming in, and think about it. So there is planning necessary with talismanic workings at their best. And another aspect of the planning, if you are trying to create actual talismans, for instance, would be getting your design right. And if you're doing them on cabochons or something like that, I really like using a gold or a silver or a black paint pen to pre-draw my lines. And that way you're not as concerned with being an artiste in the moment, because it starts getting very like, the pressure's on when you've got 12 to 45 minutes to do something.
Yes.
And if you're worried about like, oh, does that look like a frog? I don't know. So you kind of do that the night before or something like that.
Sure.
You kind of create your templates for yourself so that you take some of the pressure off yourself and make sure that the end result is as you want it. So then once you're done with your stuff, when your talismanic window closes, you stop. Sometimes there are harder stops than others. Maybe the ascendant changes and all of a sudden you've got Mars on the rising and you're doing a Mercury working and you don't want any Mars in that working. If you've got long processes, the start is the most important, but try to do everything of actual consequence, especially the fumigation, during the real window, and set an alarm for yourself so you know when to stop.
And so then, yes, with these very short windows, that must be quite a lot of pressure.
Yes, you get better at it, like anything.
Sure.
But at first it can feel very stumbly because you're like, you're performing for the planet or the star, and you feel very on stage essentially. But once you are done, you don't have to blow the altar out right away. You could actually leave it. A lot of them will have really, really good energy afterwards. And it's kind of nice to just bask in that and let it infuse your house, let it infuse your temple, depending on what the working is. You just don't want to make anything that actually will have the talismanic charge after. And then you want to stow it away from light, because light carries other astral influences. I really like putting things to gestate or incubate for at least a full lunar cycle from its creation before you start analyzing it to see if it worked. And like, don't disturb it. It takes things a while to just become themselves. If you also made herbal matter, putting your talismans to rest in the herbal matter, kind of burying it, is fantastic. You can wrap it in cloth, keep it in a place of honor and privilege, and then just forget about it for 28 days. It's a little bit like sigils, where I don't think that it helps the process for your energy to be super involved with it while it's just doing its own thing. And doing this is going to ensure that the charge really sets and that you get something potent when you unearth it later.
I love what you just said. That's absolutely my experience, actually, of creating anything magical. I finish with it and it's nice, but then when I come back to it a month later or 2 months later, it's, oh my word, this is much nicer than I remembered. That kind of thing, right? It's okay, this is something powerful. So that little gestation period is important.
It is. And the same applies for talismans that are in use a lot. People ask sometimes about do I have to recharge talismans? How do I kind of keep them juicy? And one of the main ways is just to put it back to bed for a while and let itself regenerate. So I like having multiple talismans of the same power to kind of revolve them out. And then you're always working with something that's fresh and that's ready to go to work, so to speak. Another way is to keep them on compatible altars, because the altar and the talisman juices itself and one another. And so the more that their field has to kind of like fend for themselves in the world, the more almost like tired they can get. Same goes for materia that matches a series or matches a talisman that you put on to support and further attune that talisman. The talisman itself doesn't have to do as much heavy lifting in your field. You kind of become an altar in a way, and you're just carrying that energy, and it helps potentiate the talisman's ability to act on your behalf. So with talismanic materia, it's really just a way of like compounding and building strength and fortification into different layers of the magical experience, all toward the same end. And you can use it in spell work too. And in my book, I've got more information on how to incorporate talismans in spell work. But largely speaking, it's just been something that you're kind of either wearing or you're not. And with materia, you can involve it in all kinds of other ritual processes. And it's like an astrology hack, because usually when a magician is doing a working, it's not the perfect time for that working. I mean, talismanic materia, it's a bottled election. So you can kind of create this artificial energetic snow globe of that perfect moment and invite that energy into the process, whatever magical thing you're trying to achieve. And so it's just infinitely applicable to basically anything. It's super practical, and it just 10x's whatever you're already doing. I love using it for activating sigils. I love using it as part of the energy clearing process. I mean, yeah, they're celestial supplements of the highest order. And I think any magician who hasn't tried it yet is kind of just missing out on some really good magical technology more than anything. It's not that you can't do all of this, do your magic yourself. It's just like, do you want to do it the hard way every time or not?
Use some tools. Yes, right,
Yeah.
right. And I love the way your website just shows every step of the process that you go through. And it's not just the process, but the reasons for the process. And it's just such a joy to read the way you got to each particular product at the end. Absolutely a delight to read about that. Do you enjoy writing those?
I don't enjoy writing them. I enjoy reading them later. But the other reason too that all of them are so involved, so there's the teaching component, but then there's also just showcasing how the magical journey goes, kind of like your Mercury retrograde story that you just came out with. And when people are getting into magic and they don't quite know how to be magic yet, or how a magician moves through the world, all of these workings, first and foremost, are workings. Like that we sell the product is, a new end result, but the making of magic all looks really similar overall. It's like looking for the waymarks that confirm that your work is happening. You're getting the synchronicities. So I really wanted to show how that looks, so that if people see that in their life, they can understand that it's part of the confirmation that they're doing it right.
That's wonderful. I really like everything you just said, Kaitlin. But there's